Dramatic irony is a plot device frequently used in theatre, literature, film and television to underscore the disparity between a character's perception of a situation and the audience's awareness of it. In dramatic irony, the audience or reader knows a critical piece of information that the character or characters do not. For instance, in a horror film, the audience might urge "don't go in there," because they are aware of the impending danger while the character remains oblivious. Dramatic irony occurs when the audience or reader shares knowledge with the author about present or future events that a character is unaware of. In such situations, the character might act in ways that are inappropriate given the actual circumstances, or anticipate outcomes that the audience knows will not occur. This creates a contrast between the character's understanding and the audience's knowledge. Greek tragedians often employed dramatic irony. A notable example is Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, where King Oedipus searches for King Laerces' murderer unaware that he himself is the culprit. The audience, knowing this truth from the start, experiences a deeper connection to Oedipus's tragic fate. Dramatic irony is also used in comedy. In Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, Malvolio acts with misplaced confidence due to a fake letter, not realizing he is being deceived. The audience's amusement is heightened by their awareness of the prank which Malvolio is blind to. Cosmic irony, or the irony of fate, appears in literature where fate or a deity manipulates events to give a protagonist false hopes only to ultimately frustrate them. Thomas Hardy often employed this device, as seen in Tess of the D'Urbervilles, where Tess's innocence and honesty lead to her downfall and tragic end. Romantic irony, introduced by German writers like Friedrich Schlegel, involves the author creating an illusion of reality only to shatter it by revealing the arbitrary manipulation of characters and events. This self-conscious narrative technique is exemplified in Lawrence Sterne's Tristram Shandy and Lord Byron's Don Juan, where the narrator's construction of fiction becomes part of the story. In literary criticism, irony has been extended to signify a broader criterion of literary value. T.S. Eliot and I.A. Richards described irony as a balance of opposing attitudes and evaluations in poetry, where the inclusion of opposite impulses enriches the work. This perspective was further developed by new critics like Robert Penn Warren and Clent Brooks, who argued that poems incorporating multiple attitudes achieve higher literary value due to their ironic awareness. This multifaceted use of irony in literature demonstrates its capacity to create complexity, humor, tragedy, and philosophical insight, making it a powerful tool for skilled authors. Dramatic irony is termed dramatic not because of its exaggerated or tragic qualities, but because it originated in ancient Greek drama. It is particularly well suited for the stage. In a typical play, characters frequently enter and exit, and even the scenery may change, but the audience remains in place. Consequently, the audience's understanding of the story is often more complete than that of any single character at any given moment. Classical theatre often used dramatic irony to create tension, making it a common device in tragedies. Modern cinema and television also frequently employ dramatic irony to elicit laughter, as it can have a strong comedic effect. Over the years, irony has become a popular term used to describe an attitude of detachment or subversive humor. Dramatic irony creates multiple layers of perspective on a single set of events. Some characters know very little, some know quite a lot, and the audience typically has the most complete understanding of the story. This device allows the audience to view the events from various angles simultaneously and to appreciate how slight differences in information can lead to vastly different responses to the same situation. These differences can be either comical or tragic. For instance, it's amusing to watch Regina in Mean Girls eat weight loss bars that we know are actually weight gain bars, but it's painful to see Snow White unknowingly bite into a poisoned apple that the audience knows is deadly. In some literary works, a character is privy to more information than the others, acting as a secondary audience and highlighting the pleasures and misunderstandings of dramatic irony. For example, in Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, only Algernon and the audience know that Jack and Ernest are actually the same person, or more accurately, that Jack has invented Ernest. Algernon's amusement at the complications arising from this deception mirrors the audience's enjoyment. Irony is a broad concept that encompasses several types, each with its own meaning and applications. To better understand dramatic irony, it is useful to compare it with these other forms of irony. In general, irony is a discrepancy between appearance and reality that reveals a deeper insight. Aristotle described irony in more elevated terms as a dissembling toward the inner core of truth. Dramatic irony falls under this broader definition, as it involves a character perceiving an incomplete version of the story while the audience and sometimes other characters are aware of the full reality. Therefore, every instance of dramatic irony is a form of irony, but not every instance of irony qualifies as dramatic irony. Verbal irony is the most common type of irony, where what is said differs from what is meant. This form of irony is often confused with the broader concept of irony because it directly illustrates the disconnect between perception and reality that defines all irony. Unlike other forms, verbal irony can be conveyed through tone alone, such as when someone sarcastically remarks, "What lovely weather we're having on a stormy day." In this case, the speaker's true meaning would be clear to listeners. However, subtler verbal irony can also exemplify dramatic irony. For example, if two people leave the theater after watching a terrible play and are asked by a third person who is on his way to see the next show how it was, they might glance at each other and say, "It was very interesting." This subtle verbal irony becomes an example of dramatic irony because only those who have seen the play understand the true meaning behind their words. Situational irony is another common plot device where the outcome of a series of actions is markedly different from what was expected, often resulting in a paradoxical or perverse conclusion rather than merely a surprising one. This type of irony can overlap with dramatic irony. For instance, the ending of Romeo and Juliet demonstrates both. Romeo drinks poison to join Juliet in death, not realizing she is still alive, which results in him leaving Juliet alone in life. This is situational irony because the outcome is the opposite of what Romeo intended. However, since the audience knows that Juliet isn't really dead while Romeo does not, this scene also exemplifies dramatic irony. Less common forms of irony include cosmic irony, where fateful or divine forces continually thwart a character's efforts. Historical irony, where a historical event takes on a very different meaning in hindsight. And Socratic irony, a conversational technique described in Plato's dialogues, where a speaker pretends ignorance to expose the flaws in their interlocutor's argument. These forms can also function as examples of dramatic irony when the audience or reader knows more than the characters involved. Consider a literary example. Thomas Hardy's novel Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Dramatic irony often plays a pivotal structural role in narratives characterized by secrecy and suffering, which is why it is a recurring feature in Hardy's novels. In Tess of the D'Urbervilles, dramatic irony shapes the relationship between Tess the protagonist and Angel, her potential suitor. Early in the story, before they become acquainted, Angel reflects to himself, "What a fresh and virginal daughter of nature that milkmaid is." His exclamation exemplifies dramatic irony because the reader knows that Tess bore a child conceived through rape. Later, when Angel proposes marriage to Tess, she hesitates to accept because she cannot bring herself to confess about her illegitimate child. This moment of hesitation also serves as an example of dramatic irony, as the reader understands the cause of Tess's reluctance while Angel remains unaware. These instances are just two of many throughout the novel where this device underscores the tragedy of misunderstandings and the cruelty of certain types of prejudice. Oscar Wilde's farcical plays also extensively utilize dramatic irony, albeit for a different effect. In these works, dramatic irony primarily serves as a comedic device, exposing the follies and absurdities of the main characters even when their mishaps have serious implications. In An Ideal Husband, the protagonist Sir Chiltern is approached by a mysterious woman from his past who asks him to use his political influence to support a financial scam. Sir Chiltern initially refuses and informs his wife of his decision. Later, the woman Mrs. Chevley privately threatens to ruin Sir Chiltern's career unless he complies with her request, forcing him to give in. Mrs. Chevley then triumphantly reveals Sir Chiltern's decision to his wife Lady Chiltern, who is shocked to discover her husband's corruption. Lady Chiltern: "Why did you wish to meet my husband, Mrs. Chevley?"
Mrs. Chevley: "Oh, I will tell you. I wanted to interest him in this Argentine canal scheme of which I dare say you have heard. And I found him most susceptible to reason, I mean. A rare thing in a man. I converted him in 10 minutes. He is going to make a speech in the House tomorrow night in favor of the idea. We must go to the ladies' gallery and hear him. It will be a great occasion."
This exchange demonstrates dramatic irony because only the audience understands the true meaning of Mrs. Chevley's slip of the tongue when she uses the word susceptible, implying that Sir Chiltern is susceptible to blackmail while Lady Chiltern remains unaware. One of the earliest and most famous, albeit unusual, examples of dramatic irony occurs in Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. The play tells the story of King Oedipus's quest to find and punish the murderer of the former King Laerce. Oedipus vehemently denounces the murderer, as seen in his declaration,
"Now my curse on the murderer. Whoever he is, a lone man unknown in his crime, or one among many, let that man drag out his life in agony step by painful step."
What Oedipus doesn't realize until the play's climax is that he himself murdered King Laerce, thereby unwittingly cursing himself. Although this revelation is gradually hinted at throughout the play, it isn't explicitly revealed until much later. However, because ancient Greek plays often retold well-known mythological tales, the audience would have been aware of Oedipus's true identity, giving his words a dual meaning underscored by dramatic irony. Dramatic irony serves a wide variety of purposes. Structurally, it is an excellent tool in both tragedy and comedy. It can create suspense or enhance a story's emotional impact while also leading to a series of humorous misunderstandings. It allows the audience to feel they are in a privileged position of knowledge or understanding compared to the ignorance of the characters. Yet it can also evoke a sense of helplessness as they witness events unfold toward their inevitable and often tragic conclusion. Broadly speaking, dramatic irony illustrates that all perspectives are partial and limited and that appearances can be deceiving.